Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Endeavour, watching the stars drift past the viewport like tiny diamonds scattered across black velvet. His ship was deep in unexplored space, far from Earth and the safety of human colonies, but Jake felt excited rather than worried, because this was what humanity did best. They explored places nobody else dared to go. Dr. Lisa Carter rushed onto the bridge with her tablet in hand, and her eyes bright with discovery. Jake had known Lisa for 10 years, and he could tell when she found something important by the way she moved and spoke. Today she practically bounced on her feet as she approached his captain's chair. "Jake, we found something incredible," Lisa said while pulling up data on the main screen. "The energy readings are off the charts and they don't match anything in our databases or the coalition records." The view screen filled with swirling colors and patterns that hurt to look at directly. Jake squinted at the display, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The energy signature pulsed like a heartbeat, but it was massive beyond anything humans had ever encountered before. "How big are we talking about, Lisa?" Jake asked while studying. The readings that scrolled past faster than he could read them. "Bigger than a moon, Captain, and the energy output is equivalent to a small star, but it's not giving off heat or radiation in any normal way," Lisa explained while her fingers danced across her tablet. "Whatever this thing is, it's using technology we don't understand at all." Jake made his decision quickly because that was what good captains did when faced with the unknown. "Set course for the anomaly, but keep us at a safe distance," he ordered the navigation officer, Grace Turner, who nodded and began plotting their approach. The Endeavour moved closer over the next 6 hours, and what they found defied every law of physics. Jake thought he understood. A massive structure floated in empty space with no visible means of support or power source. It looked like someone had built a city in the shape of a flower with petals made of metal and crystal that sparkled with their own inner light. "Scans show the structure is at least 50,000 years old," reported Dr. Ben Rodriguez from his science station. "The materials are unknown, but they're definitely artificial and incredibly advanced." Jake felt his heart race as he realized they might have found something left behind by an ancient civilization. Humanity had been members of the Galactic Coalition for 50 years, but they were always treated like children by the older species who thought humans were too young and too reckless to handle real responsibility. "Any signs of life or activity?" Jake asked, while moving closer to the main screen to get a better look at the alien structure. "None that we can detect, Captain, but there are some kind of access ports that look like they might fit our shuttles," Amy Johnson reported from her engineering station. "The structure seems to be inviting us inside." Jake knew this was the kind of decision that could change everything for humanity. They could report back to the coalition and let the older species take over the investigation, or they could do what humans always did and explore first, then ask permission later. "Prepare a shuttle team," Jake ordered, while turning to face his crew. "Lisa, you're with me along with Commander Nick Peterson and his security team. If this is what I think it is, then humanity needs to see it first." The shuttle bay buzzed with activity as the away team prepared for what might be the most important discovery in human history. Nick Peterson checked his weapons while his team, including Lieutenant Sophie Williams and Sergeant Tony Chen, ran final equipment checks. The ancient structure grew larger as their shuttle approached, and Jake could see details that the ship's sensors had missed. Strange symbols covered the surface like writing, but in no language any human had ever seen before. Ports opened as if the structure recognized their approach and welcomed them inside. "This is definitely not natural," Lisa whispered as they flew through corridors wide enough for ships 10 times larger than their shuttle. "The builders must have been giants, or they built this for something much bigger than us." They landed in what looked like a docking bay with gravity and atmosphere that registered as safe for humans. Jake led his team out of the shuttle with weapons ready, but the ancient structure felt empty rather than threatening, like a museum waiting for visitors. The team spent hours exploring corridors and chambers filled with technology that made human Science looked like children playing with sticks and stones. Lisa's equipment went crazy trying to analyze materials and energy sources that shouldn't exist according to everything humans knew about the universe. Then they found the control room, with walls covered in displays that lit up when Lisa approached them. Somehow the ancient computer systems recognized her as an intelligent being and began showing her images and data that made her gasp with amazement. "Jake, you need to see this!" Lisa called out, while staring at a display showing star maps and weapon designs. "This isn't just ancient technology, Captain. This is something that could destroy entire solar systems." Jake joined her at the display and felt his blood turn cold as he realized what they had found. The ancient builders had created weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space itself and reshape reality according to their will. It was technology so advanced that it seemed like magic to human understanding. "We need to get this information back to Earth immediately," Jake said while copying the data to portable storage devices. This changes everything about humanity's place in the galaxy. But as they prepared to leave, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that their discovery would bring more trouble than opportunity, because the older species in the coalition would never allow humans to possess such powerful technology. Ambassador Ryan Brooks sat in the coalition council chambers watching the three ruling species debate humanity's fate like he wasn't even in the room. The Zenthari representative spoke in mathematical formulas, while the Corvan delegate growled threats, and the ethereal collective member floated silently, but Ryan could feel psychic pressure against his mind like cold fingers trying to read his thoughts. "The humans have discovered technology beyond their comprehension," declared High Mathematician Vex 9 of the Zenthari, while data streams flowed across holographic displays. "Probability calculations show a 97.4% chance of catastrophic misuse if they retain access to architect artifacts." War Master Thakron of the Corvan Empire slammed his armored fist on the council table, making the whole structure vibrate. "Humans are warriors, but they lack discipline and wisdom," he snarled, while his predator eyes fixed on Ryan. "They will use these weapons to challenge the natural order and bring chaos to the galaxy." The ethereal representative didn't speak with words, but Ryan felt its thoughts pressing against his mental defenses like ice water flooding his brain. The message was clear. Humans were too emotionally unstable and unpredictable to be trusted with reality. Altering technology, Ryan stood up slowly because he knew this moment would define humanity's future in the galaxy. "With respect, honored council members, humanity has been a peaceful member of the coalition for 50 years, he said while meeting each alien gaze without flinching. "We have never started wars or threatened other species with our technology. Your species has been contained and limited," replied Vex 9 while calculating probability matrices in real time. "Remove those restrictions and chaos probability increases exponentially beyond acceptable parameters." Back on Earth, President Elena Martinez paced in the Oval Office while her advisors argued about humanity's response to the coalition ultimatum. General Chris Taylor wanted to mobilize the fleet while Secretary Karen Walsh pushed for diplomatic compromise, but Elena knew that whatever they decided would echo through history. "The coalition is demanding we surrender all research data and accept permanent technology restrictions," Elena said while reviewing the formal ultimatum document. "They want to treat us like children who can't be trusted with dangerous toys." "Maybe they have a point, Madam President," Secretary Walsh suggested while pulling up casualty estimates from previous galactic wars. "The architect technology is incredibly powerful and we barely understand how it works." General Taylor shook his head firmly while pointing at tactical displays showing coalition fleet movements. "If we submit now, we'll never be equals in this galaxy," he argued with conviction. "The other species will always see us as junior partners who need supervision." Elena walked to the window overlooking the rose garden while thinking about the choice that would define humanity's place among the stars. Accept the restrictions and remain safe but limited, or refuse, and face the combined might of 3 advanced civilizations. Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Carter worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the USS Endeavour, trying to unlock the secrets of architect technology before the Coalition deadline expired. Her team, including Dr. Ben Rodriguez and engineer Amy Johnson, ran analysis after analysis, but the ancient devices seemed to operate on principles that violated known physics. "The energy patterns don't make sense, Ben," Lisa said while studying quantum resonance data that kept changing every time she looked at it. "It's like the technology responds to the user's intentions rather than following programmed instructions." Dr. Rodriguez adjusted his instruments again while shaking his head in confusion. "The materials analysis shows impossible atomic structures, Lisa," he reported while double-checking his readings. "These metals shouldn't exist according to our understanding of chemistry." Amy Johnson looked up from her engineering console with excitement in her eyes. "What if we're thinking about this wrong?" she suggested while pulling up new data displays. "What if architect technology doesn't follow our rules because it makes its own rules?" Captain Jake Morrison watched his science team work while knowing that coalition fleets were already moving toward human space to enforce their ultimatum. Commander Nick Peterson's security reports showed massive military buildups around every major human colony and trading route. "How much time do we have before they cut off our communications?" Jake asked while reviewing strategic assessments from military intelligence. "Less than 48 hours, Captain," Nick replied while checking updated fleet positions. "The Zenthari are jamming subspace frequencies while the Corvins are blockading jump points and the Ethereals are conducting psychic surveillance on our diplomatic channels." Jake made a decision that would have terrified any reasonable starship. "Captain, but humans specialized in unreasonable decisions when backed into corners." "Lisa, how long do you need to understand enough of this technology to be useful?" "I don't know, Jake," Lisa answered honestly while running her hands through her hair in frustration. "We're dealing with science that's 50,000 years ahead of ours, and it operates on principles we haven't discovered yet." "Then we'll have to learn as we go," Jake replied while activating ship-wide communications. "All hands. This is the captain speaking. The Coalition has given humanity an ultimatum: submit to permanent restrictions or face isolation from galactic society." He paused while choosing his words carefully because what he said next would either inspire his crew or terrify them into mutiny. "I'm not willing to accept either option," Jake continued, while his voice carried to every compartment on the ship. "We're going to do what humans do best: find a third choice that nobody else thought was possible." Dr. Carter looked up from her work as Jake's words echoed through the laboratory. Something in his tone made her think about the architect technology in a new way, because maybe the key wasn't understanding how it worked, but believing that it could work. "Amy, start modifying our navigation systems to interface with architect components," Lisa ordered, while a crazy idea began forming in her mind. "Ben, I need you to calculate jump coordinates for Earth using completely theoretical principles." "Lisa, that's impossible with our current understanding of the technology," Ben protested while reviewing the incomplete data they had gathered. "Good," Lisa replied with a smile that would have worried anyone who knew her well. "Impossible is exactly what we need right now because the Coalition thinks humans can't achieve the impossible." The next 36 hours passed in a blur of desperate work as the crew of the USS Endeavour attempted something that violated every law of physics they had ever learned. They were going to use partially understood alien technology to jump across half the galaxy in an instant and arrive at Earth before the Coalition could complete their blockade. As the deadline approached, Jake stood on his bridge surrounded by jury-rigged alien components that hummed with energy patterns that made his teeth ache. "All stations report ready, Captain," Grace Turner announced, while her navigation console displayed coordinates that led to empty space according to conventional physics. "Then let's show the galaxy what humans can do when we refuse to accept the two. Impossible." Jake ordered, while hoping they wouldn't accidentally tear a hole in space-time that would doom them all. The Coalition ultimatum expired at exactly 0800 Galactic Standard Time, and the three alien fleets moved with mechanical precision to isolate humanity from the rest of the galaxy. Zenthari ships positioned themselves at communication, relay stations while Corvin vessels blockaded major trade routes, and ethereal craft began psychic surveillance of human colonies. Admiral Kate Brown watched from the bridge of the USS Constitution as alien ships cut off Earth's connection to the Galactic Network one system at a time. Her fleet of 200 human vessels looked pathetic compared to the 3,000 Coalition ships that surrounded them, but Kate had never backed down from impossible odds before. "Sir, the outer colonies are going dark," reported her communications officer while monitoring the systematic shutdown of human infrastructure. Mars colony lost contact 17 minutes ago, and the Jupiter stations went silent 3 minutes after that. "They're not destroying anything yet," observed General Alex Murphy from the tactical station. "The Coalition wants us to surrender voluntarily, rather than fight because they think we're smart enough to recognize hopeless odds." Kate smiled grimly while studying the enemy fleet positions because she had served with humans long enough to know they specialized in redefining hopeless odds. "They don't understand us very well, do they, General?" Meanwhile, in deep space, the USS Endeavour prepared for an impossible jump that would either save humanity or destroy the ship and everyone aboard it. Captain Jake Morrison stood at his command, chair surrounded by alien technology that hummed with energy patterns that made reality itself seem unstable. "All systems show ready, Captain," reported Amy Johnson, while monitoring architect components that had been hastily integrated into the ship's navigation array. "Though I have to say, our chances of survival are somewhere between slim and none." Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her science station where impossible calculations scrolled across displays faster than human eyes could follow. "The architect technology is responding to our determination more than our technical knowledge," she announced while watching energy levels climb beyond anything their ship was designed to handle. "Zenthari probability analysis gives us a 0.0001% chance of success," added Dr. Ben Rodriguez, while shaking his head at readings that violated fundamental laws of physics. "Their computers actually crashed trying to calculate how we could achieve instantaneous galactic travel." Jake felt the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders as he prepared to give the order that would either make history or end it. "The Coalition thinks humans are too primitive to handle advanced technology," he said, while his crew held their breath. "Let's prove them wrong by doing something they consider impossible." "Engage," Jake ordered, and reality twisted around the USS Endeavour like space itself was being folded into impossible shapes. The jump should have taken microseconds, but it felt like hours as the crew experienced sensations no human had ever felt before. Grace Turner watched her navigation console display coordinates that changed continuously while showing them traveling through dimensions that didn't exist on any chart. "Hull stress is beyond critical limits," Amy reported while alarms sounded throughout the ship. "We're being torn apart at the molecular level, but somehow we're still holding together." Dr. Carter watched in amazement as the architect technology responded to human willpower rather than engineering principles. "The ship wants to survive," she whispered, while energy flowed through systems that shouldn't function under these conditions. "We're convincing reality to let us exist in multiple places at once." The jump ended with a shock wave that scattered debris across light years of space, but when the stars stopped spinning, the USS Endeavour found itself in orbit around Earth, with half its hull damaged and most of its crew unconscious from the impossible journey they had just completed. "Medical emergency on all decks," announced Dr. Sam Wright over the intercom, while rushing to treat crew members who had been exposed to forces that didn't exist in normal space-time. "Captain Morrison is critical but stable, and we have 17 crew members in emergency care." Lieutenant Commander Beth Harris took command while Jake fought for his life in the medical bay because the impossible jump had cost them more than anyone expected. "All stations report status," she ordered while assessing damage that would have destroyed any normal starship. "Navigation is offline, engines are functioning at 30%, and our communications array was completely rewritten by Architect Energy." Grace reported while trying to make sense of systems that now operated on alien principles. "The good news is we're home, Captain." Beth looked at the tactical display showing Coalition fleets converging on Earth and realized they had gained nothing except the element of surprise. "How long before the enemy reaches us?" 6 hours until the first Zenthari scouts arrive, reported Sergeant Tony Chen from the security station. "Full fleet deployment in 18 hours, assuming standard approach patterns." Meanwhile on Earth, President Elena Martinez received word that the USS Endeavour had somehow appeared in orbit without using any known method of faster-than-light travel. The implications were staggering because it meant humans had successfully used architect technology to achieve the impossible. "How did they get here?" demanded General Taylor while studying sensor logs that showed the Endeavour materializing out of empty space. "Our best scientists said instantaneous galactic travel was theoretically impossible." "Apparently our scientists were wrong," Elena replied while reviewing reports from the ship that detailed their desperate jump across half the galaxy. "Or maybe humans just redefined what's possible?" Secretary Walsh looked pale as she read intelligence reports about Coalition fleet movements. "Madam President, we have 3 alien armadas approaching Earth with enough firepower to sterilize every human colony in the galaxy," she announced while pulling up tactical assessments. "Even with whatever new technology the Endeavour discovered, we're still outnumbered 15-1. Elena walked to the window overlooking Washington while thinking about humanity's options because surrender meant accepting permanent second-class status, while fighting meant facing extinction against impossible odds. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Brown and prepare to address the nation," she ordered while making the hardest decision of her presidency. "Ma'am, what are you going to tell them?" General Taylor asked, while knowing that panic could destroy human decency. "Civilization faster than alien weapons, the truth," Elena replied while watching civilian traffic continue normally outside because most people didn't know their species was about to face its greatest test. "That humanity has always specialized in achieving the impossible when everything depends on it." Aboard the damaged USS Endeavour, Dr. Carter worked frantically to understand how they had survived the impossible jump, because she knew they would need to do it again if humanity was going to survive. "The technology responds to conviction more than knowledge," she explained to her team while studying energy patterns that defied analysis. "So we succeeded because we believed we could?" asked Amy while trying to repair systems that now operated on principles she didn't understand. "More than that," Lisa replied, while watching data that showed their ship had briefly existed in 17 different locations simultaneously. "We succeeded because we refused to believe we couldn't, and somehow the universe decided to agree with us." As Coalition fleets approached Earth, the crew of the USS Endeavour realized they had discovered something more valuable than advanced technology. They had learned that reality itself might be more flexible than anyone imagined, and humans might be uniquely qualified to take advantage of that flexibility. The battle for Earth began when 3,000 Coalition ships emerged from hyperspace like angry metal clouds blotting out the stars. Admiral Kate Brown watched from the USS Constitution's bridge as enemy fleets arranged themselves in perfect formations that demonstrated their overwhelming technological and numerical superiority. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Brown," she announced over fleet communications, while her 200 ships prepared to face impossible odds. "Today we fight not just for our survival, but for our right to exist as equals in this galaxy." High mathematician Vex 9 aboard the Zenthari flagship calculated human defeat with 99.9% certainty, while War Master Thacron's Corvin fleet-powered weapons designed to crack planetary shields. The ethereal collective's psychic assault ships began broadcasting mental static to confuse human thoughts and coordination. Dr. Lisa Carter worked desperately in the USS Endeavor's damaged science lab while Captain Jake Morrison recovered from the impossible jump that had brought them home. "I need to understand how we survived that impossible journey," she muttered while studying energy readings that violated every law of physics she knew. "The architect technology doesn't follow our rules," Lisa reported Dr. Ben Rodriguez while monitoring quantum fluctuations that changed based on who was observing them. "It responds to the user's absolute conviction that something can be achieved regardless of mathematical probability." Amy Johnson looked up from her engineering station with sudden understanding. "So, if we absolutely believe our weapons can penetrate their shields, then maybe they will," she suggested while connecting architect components to the ship's defense systems. "That's insane," Ben protested while calculating the impossibility of what she was suggesting. "Good," Lisa replied with a dangerous smile. "Insane is exactly what we need because the Coalition expects us to fight rationally." Lieutenant Commander Beth Harris broadcast Lisa's discovery to the human fleet, while alien vessels moved into attack formation. "All ships, this is Endeavor Actual," she announced while sharing impossible weapons modifications. "We're going to fight this battle using technology that works because we believe it works." Captain Dan Foster aboard the USS Liberty was the first EE to test the theory when Corvin destroyers opened fire on his damaged frigate. Instead of accepting that his shields were too weak to stop planet-killing weapons, Dan convinced himself that energy barriers were just polite suggestions that his ship could choose to ignore. The Corvin weapons struck Foster's shields and scattered harmlessly into space like raindrops hitting an umbrella. War Master Thackeron roared in confusion as his computer systems reported impossible defensive readings from a ship that should have been vaporized instantly. "How are they deflecting our primary weapons?" demanded Thackeron, while his tactical officers struggled to understand sensor data that made no sense. Meanwhile, pilot Maria Santos discovered that her fighter could phase through solid matter by simply refusing to believe that atoms were impermeable barriers. She flew directly through a Zenthari cruiser's hull while the alien crew watched in horror as human technology violated fundamental laws of physics. High mathematician Vex 9 experienced something Zenthari never felt: complete confusion as his probability calculations returned error messages when trying to analyze human combat tactics. Their weapons are achieving impossible penetration rates, while their defenses are deflecting energy levels that should overwhelm any known shielding technology. Dr. Carter realized that humanity's greatest advantage wasn't superior technology, but their willingness to attempt things that rational beings would never try. "All ships, this is Dr. Carter," she broadcast while watching impossible battles unfold across her tactical display. "The universe only limits those who accept limitations." Commander Ryan Scott's frigate USS Ranger had been nearly destroyed by ethereal psychic attacks that turned his crew's minds against each other, but instead of accepting defeat, Ryan convinced his damaged ship to regenerate its hull by remembering what it looked like when it was whole. "Hull breach in Section 7 is sealing itself, sir," reported his engineering officer while watching metal flow like liquid to repair combat damage. "The ship is healing faster than we can scan the repairs." Captain Helen Clark aboard the USS Freedom discovered that her torpedo launchers could fire ammunition that decided to ignore enemy point defense systems by taking impossible flight paths through folded space. Her weapons struck Zenthari ships from directions that didn't exist, while enemy computers crashed trying to calculate intercept courses. The Coalition fleets found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of engagement because human weapons worked through belief rather than physics. Zenthari shields failed when human gunners absolutely believed their shots would penetrate. Corvin armor cracked when human engineers convinced it that protection was optional. Ethereal psychic attacks bounced harmlessly off human minds that simply refused to be controlled. "This is impossible," transmitted high mathematician Vex 9 while watching his fleet take damage from weapons that shouldn't function. Humans are achieving tactical results that violate mathematical certainty. War Master Thakron's battle rage turned to confusion as human ships survived direct hits from weapons designed to destroy space stations. They fight without honor by ignoring the laws that govern all warfare, he snarled, while his tactical displays showed impossible combat data. The ethereal collective's mind readers encountered human thoughts that literally broke their understanding of consciousness, because humans were thinking their way through problems that should have been unsolvable. Human pilots flew ships that exceeded light speed without creating time dilation, simply by believing that physics were more like guidelines than rules. Admiral Brown watched her impossible fleet achieve victories that would have been miraculous if they weren't happening right in front of her eyes. "All ships continue current tactics," she ordered, while studying battle reports that read like science fiction. "We're proving that the universe is more flexible than anyone imagined." Dr. Rodriguez worked frantically to weaponize impossibility itself, while coalition fleets struggled to adapt to human tactics that violated every principle of space combat. "I've created ammunition that chooses to ignore the laws of physics," he announced while loading torpedo tubes with warheads that would decide their own targeting parameters. "How do we aim weapons that think for themselves?" asked his weapons officer. "While studying firing solutions that kept changing based on the ammunition's preferences, we don't aim them," Rodriguez replied, while launching torpedoes that immediately began taking impossible flight paths toward enemy vessels. "We just suggest targets and let them figure out how to get there." The battle raged for 6 hours while human crews discovered that believing in victory actually increased their chances of achieving it. Ships that should have been destroyed continued, fighting because their crews convinced the universe that they were too stubborn to die, but the coalition adapted their tactics by targeting human civilian populations to force surrender, because they calculated that humanity's emotional nature would compel them to protect innocent lives rather than continue an impossible war that was somehow succeeding against all rational expectations. The coalition's strategy backfired spectacularly when they began targeting human civilian populations because instead of breaking human resolve, the attacks triggered something the alien species had never encountered before: righteous fury combined. With impossible technology on Mars, colony farmer John Mitchell watched Corvin bombers approach his agricultural domes, and instead of running for shelter, he walked into his irradiated fields and demanded that the poisoned soil help his crops grow, rather than kill them. The radiation obeyed his absolute conviction and began nourishing plants that should have withered and died. "This is impossible," transmitted the Corvin bomber pilot while watching fertile gardens bloom in soil that registered lethal radiation levels. "The human is growing food in a nuclear wasteland by simply refusing to accept that it can't be done." Engineer Lucy Parker on the Europa mining station faced atmospheric processor failures that would kill 30,000 colonists in less than an hour. But instead of accepting the inevitable, she walked up to the broken machines and politely asked them to try harder because people were counting on them. The processors responded to her absolute belief that mechanical systems could choose to work beyond their design specifications and began producing breathable atmosphere using impossible energy efficiency that violated thermodynamic laws. Teacher Kevin Roberts protected his students from orbital bombardment on the Titan Educational Colony by simply refusing to believe that classroom ceilings were capable of collapsing even when hit by weapons designed to level mountains. The building's structure agreed with his conviction and deflected planet-killing energy beams like they were gentle rain. Dr. Carter realized that humanity's greatest strength wasn't individual genius, but their ability to work together toward impossible goals. When she detected similar reality-bending events occurring across every human colony simultaneously, all human ships and colonies. "This is Dr. Carter broadcasting on all frequencies," she announced while watching impossible rescues and defenses unfold across her tactical display. The architect technology responds to collective human will and our refusal to accept limitations. The principles of applied impossibility spread through human space like wildfire, as ordinary people discovered they could achieve miracles by simply believing that the universe was more cooperative than anyone had previously assumed. Captain Jake Morrison recovered from his injuries just as the battle reached its climax, because Dr. Sam Wright had convinced damaged organs to heal faster than biology allowed by insisting that medical emergencies were temporary inconveniences rather than permanent conditions. Status report, Jake demanded, while taking command of the USS Endeavour from Lieutenant Commander Beth Harris, who had kept the ship fighting through impossible circumstances. "Sir, the coalition fleets are retreating to defensive positions," Beth reported, while monitoring enemy movements that showed confusion rather than tactical withdrawal. Their own populations are beginning to adopt human impossible thinking methods. High mathematician Vex 9 experienced computational overflow as Xanthari scientists across his home fleet began achieving breakthrough discoveries by ignoring mathematical limits that had constrained their research for thousands of years. "Our probability engines are failing because the universe appears to be accepting human suggestions that mathematics are negotiable," he transmitted to his fleet commanders while watching impossible research results flood his data networks. War Master Thakaron discovered that his own warriors were achieving impossible feats of strength and endurance by believing that victory was more important than physical limitations. After watching humans accomplish tactical miracles through sheer, stubborn determination, the humans have infected our forces with their insane belief that the impossible can be achieved through conviction alone, he snarled while watching Corvin. Soldiers lift weights that should have crushed them and survive injuries that should have been fatal. The ethereal collective's psychic network began broadcasting human thoughts instead of blocking them as their mental barriers collapsed under the weight of impossible human emotions that literally broke alien understanding of consciousness. Captain Morrison made the most audacious decision in human military history when he announced plans for simultaneous strikes against all three coalition homeworlds using modified architect technology that would make their ships exist in multiple locations at once. "Sir, that's completely impossible according to every law of physics we understand," protested Amy Johnson while reviewing the tactical requirements for such an unprecedented operation. "Perfect," Jake replied while coordinating with Admiral Brown and the entire human fleet. "Impossible is what we do best, and the coalition is finally learning that lesson." Commander Nick Peterson led the modified strike teams, including specialists who had learned to carry weapons that chose to be more effective and wear armor that preferred to be invulnerable rather than merely protective. "All strike teams, this is Peterson Actual," he announced, while preparing for insertion missions that would require traveling through space that decided to be shorter than normal physics allowed. "We're going to visit the alien homeworld simultaneously and convince them that continued warfare is counterproductive." Captain Dan Foster's USS Liberty became the first human vessel to achieve impossible multiplication when his ship's crew absolutely believed that one frigate could become 100 frigates through creative interpretation of counting methods that ignored traditional mathematics. "Sir, we're reading 17 distinct USS Liberty signatures on sensors," reported his tactical officer while watching impossible fleet multiplication occur across the human battle group. "Only 17, Foster replied with disappointment. "Tell the crew to try harder because I want at least 50 copies before we reach the Xanthari homeworld." The galaxy watched in amazement and horror as 200 human ships somehow became 20,000 vessels through applied impossibility that convinced reality to accept flexible definitions of numerical accuracy. Xanthari Prime's planetary shields failed when human engineers suggested that defensive barriers would work more effectively if they operated in reverse and protected attacking forces rather than defending targets. The Corvin throne world experienced gravitational anomalies when human pilots convinced local spacetime that gravity should point upward instead of down, because everyone knows that what goes up doesn't necessarily have to come down. The ethereal collective's psychic network completely collapsed when human thoughts began broadcasting through their mental communication systems, spreading impossible ideas that broke alien understanding of consciousness. And reality president Elena Martinez received reports from across human space showing ordinary people achieving extraordinary things through nothing more than absolute conviction that the universe was willing to cooperate with those brave enough to attempt the impossible. Madam President, we're receiving surrender requests from all 3 coalition fleets, announced General Taylor, while studying tactical displays that showed alien forces in complete disarray. They're not just surrendering to superior firepower, added Secretary Walsh while reviewing diplomatic communications from confused alien commanders. They're surrendering to ideas that are reshaping their understanding of what's possible. Elena smiled as she realized that humanity had won not through superior technology or military strength, but through their stubborn refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible when survival and freedom were at stake. The coalition surrender came not through military defeat, but through philosophical transformation as their own populations began adopting human methods of impossible thinking that reshaped their understanding of reality itself. High mathematician. Vex 9 approached Ambassador Ryan Brooks aboard the neutral station where surrender negotiations took place, but instead of demanding terms, he requested instruction in human techniques for ignoring mathematical limitations that had constrained. Zenthari progress for millennia. Your species has discovered something we lost long ago, Vex 9 admitted while his crystalline features displayed confusion and wonder. The ability to achieve results by believing they are possible rather than calculating their probability. War Master Thakron arrived with his honor guard, but instead of threatening violence, he demonstrated Corvan warriors achieving impossible feats of strength by convincing themselves that victory was more important than physical limitations. My soldiers now lift weights that should crush them and survive battles that should kill them, Thakron explained while watching his troops perform. Impossible exercises. They have learned from humans that the universe responds to determination rather than accepting defeat. The ethereal collective's representative didn't speak with words, but Ryan felt thoughts that expressed gratitude rather than anger because human impossible meditation techniques had unlocked new psychic abilities that expanded consciousness beyond previous limitations. We want to learn. The ethereal communicated through mental contact that felt warm rather than invasive. Humans have shown us that reality is more flexible than we believed, and consciousness can reshape the universe through absolute conviction. Dr. Lisa Carter established the Institute of Applied Impossibility on Earth, where scientists from across the galaxy came to study human techniques for achieving the theoretically impossible through practical stubbornness and creative problem-solving. The key is refusing to accept limitations that others consider absolute. Lisa explained to a mixed class of human and alien students while demonstrating impossible physics experiments. The universe is surprisingly cooperative when you approach it with confidence rather than fear. Zenthari students learned to achieve scientific breakthroughs by ignoring mathematical constraints, while Corvan warriors discovered that believing in victory actually increased their combat effectiveness beyond what training could accomplish. Ethereal mystics found that impossible meditation techniques taught by humans allowed them to expand their psychic abilities into dimensions they had never imagined existed. Captain Jake Morrison became the first human Supreme Admiral of the reformed Galactic Alliance when the 3 former ruling species requested human leadership in exploring the new possibilities that impossible thinking had revealed. Humans will guide us into territories of possibility that we never dared to explore, announced the Coalition Council, while formally transferring authority to human administrators who specialized in achieving the impossible. Commander Nick Peterson established the Impossibility Corps as an organization dedicated to solving problems that other species considered unsolvable by applying human techniques of stubborn determination and creative reality interpretation. Our mission is simple. Peterson explained to his first graduating class of impossible problem solvers. When the universe says something can't be done, we politely disagree and do it anyway. The architect ruins revealed their final secret to Dr. Ben Rodriguez and his expanded research team when they discovered that the ancient civilization hadn't been destroyed by war or natural disaster but had simply evolved beyond the need for physical existence. The architects mastered the art of impossibility so completely that they became living ideas rather than biological beings, Rodriguez announced. While studying artifacts that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, they left their technology behind as a test, waiting for a species stubborn enough to refuse the word impossible, added Dr. Carl Anderson, while examining materials that change their properties based on the observer's expectations. The test results showed that humanity passed not through superior intelligence or advanced evolution, but through their fundamental refusal to accept limitations that other species considered. Natural laws. Amy Johnson led the engineering teams that rebuilt galactic infrastructure using impossible technology that worked because human operators absolutely believed it would function beyond design specifications. We're not just building better machines, Amy explained while demonstrating devices that improved their own performance through user confidence. We're teaching the universe that cooperation produces better results than resistance. President Elena Martinez negotiated humanity's new position as senior members of the Galactic Alliance, with other species seeking human guidance on achieving breakthrough discoveries through impossible thinking techniques. Earth will become the center for creative problem-solving, Elena announced, while signing agreements that established human leadership in galactic exploration and scientific advancement. We'll teach anyone who wants to learn that the universe is full of suggestions rather than unbreakable laws, she continued while alien diplomats took notes on human negotiation techniques that achieved win-win results through impossible compromise. The new generation of human children, including young explorers like Tommy Hayes and Katie Wilson, learned from birth that the universe was a collection of polite suggestions rather than rigid rules that limited what determined people could accomplish. Why? Can't we fly, Mommy? Asked little Katie while watching birds outside her classroom window. Who says you can't, sweetheart? Replied her teacher, while encouraging students to test the boundaries of possibility. Have you tried asking gravity to be optional for a few minutes? Admiral Kate Brown established the Department of Impossible Solutions under Dr. Carter's leadership, while Earth became the galaxy's premier destination for species-seeking breakthrough. Discoveries through human-taught techniques. We've learned that the universe responds to confidence and determination rather than accepting defeat, Kate explained while reviewing impossible achievements that were becoming routine throughout human space. Other species spent millions of years assuming their limitations were permanent, she continued while studying reports of impossible accomplishments. Humans spent 50 years proving that limitations are temporary inconveniences. The final scene showed an ancient ethereal philosopher learning to fly through impossible meditation techniques that convinced gravity that enlightened beings should be exempt from falling down. This is completely impossible according to known physics, the philosopher protested while hovering 3 feet above the ground through pure conviction. Exactly, replied his human instructor with a smile. Impossible is where we do our best work because the universe loves a good challenge. The day humans defied the impossible became the day the impossible became possible for everyone willing to learn humanity's greatest lesson, that the universe only limits those who accept limitations, and reality is surprisingly negotiable when approached with enough determination and creative stubbornness. Across the galaxy, species that had been bound by ancient restrictions for millions of years began achieving breakthrough discoveries by adopting human techniques for politely ignoring rules that had never been tested because nobody had been stubborn enough to try.